And same thing in recovery. She goes hard on her recovery, and it shows. And I'm not going to tell her story. I'm going to let her do it.
All right, man.
Come on, Victoria.
Hi, Victoria. I'm an alcoholic.
Hi, Victoria.
So they make jokes about me being loud. So can you hear me?
Yes.
Yep.
Good. I am very loud. I know that. I have a sobriety date of November the 30th of 2019. I have a home group which meets via Zoom called Prime Time. I have a sponsor who knows that she's my sponsor. I have sponsees that I actively work with. I actively do service work. I go into jails and prisons all through the county, all through other counties, and all across the state. When I say I fucking do this thing, I fucking do this thing. Point blank, period. You may not always see me in meetings, but I promise you that the people who really need to hear the message are the ones that it's getting told to. That's how I do my recovery. So that means I have like 5 years and some odd days and some odd months, whatever that may be. So let's take you back. I don't like to share this part of my story because I feel like it makes people look differently at me, but if I don't tell these parts of the story, you don't understand how I got to where I got. So all the way back to early childhood. I lived in complete and utter chaos my entire life. I had a mom who was in active addiction, a stepfather who was in active addiction, and a grandfather who drank all the time, and a grandmother who stayed gone all the time. Grew up in a little town called Vail, North Carolina, which is where I still live. If we're getting really specific, the town's called Cat Square. It's a really small place. We have a Cat Square Christmas parade that happens one time a year on the second Saturday of December every year. It goes right past by my house. Greatest thing, we call it the best parade you'll ever see. And it really is. And I grew up on a farm. Like we had horses and cows and chickens and goats and all those things. And my grandparents lived in one house, and my mom lived in a single wide trailer on the other. All shared the same property. I learned how to be manipulative at a very young age, right? I could go bounce from one house to the next house. I could do whatever I wanted to do whenever I wanted to do that, and I learned that. I had a stepfather who was really abusive, not only physically, emotionally, mentally, but sexually. And like I said, him and my mom were in active addiction, and I got put in some pretty rough situations. It got to the point where they would sell me for their habits. That's all we need to know about that. The abuse had gotten so bad that we'll get to that. So I always had to find something to like take my mind off of what was going on, right? I got a mom that I'm seeking approval from, putting myself in bad situations because at the end of the day, that's all I wanted, right? I just wanted somebody in this world to give a fuck about me, right? That's all. I remember from a really young age, I always felt like I was different. I wasn't good enough. I had all these feelings of inadequacy that I would never be able to measure up. I was always such a disappointment that you only wanted me around because I had something that you wanted. Like I learned all that from an early age. I grew up in a household where we didn't speak unless spoken to. You shut your mouth and you sit in the corner and you do as you're told. You're not allowed to have a personality. And I've always had this giant personality, which I still have, so imagine trying to contain that into this little bitty ball. And it was hard. It was really hard. So I learned how to ride horses. When I say I rode horses, I rode horses. We didn't have a lot of money. My grandpa didn't even really buy me a horse. We had one horse that he ended up having to get put down, but I had a neighbor who lived right beside of me, and her name was Kathy, and Kathy kind of took me under her wing. I think that she had an idea about what was really going on inside of my life, and she went to rodeos all the time. She was a barrel racer. She taught me how to barrel race. We grew up poor when I was living with my mom, right? I mean, I was lucky if I got new shoes, new clothes. I remember, like we were always on free lunch. Like I remember eating butter noodles out of the cabinet, and that was called dinner. Like what you got is what you got. For a long time, I remember my mom only got a new pair of shoes one time a year, and that's whenever tax time came. And I never really had gratitude for that woman until I went and worked in a warehouse and I realized how bad my feet hurt, and I've seen all the sacrifices that she made for me as a child. But this woman, Kathy, she taught me how to ride. When I say I can ride horses, I can ride some horses. She'd take me to all these fancy rodeos. These people would show up in $80,000 horse trailers and a $40,000 horse and their $600 boots. And here's little old Victoria out here in jeans that don't even fit, got holes in them, and my boots on that were hand-me-downs. And it was always my mission to be better than them. Always, right? Because I needed to feel important. And that's what I did. I didn't ever race. I didn't want to officially race, but before the barrel racing started, I'd get out with all those showgirls who thought they were the best and smoke their asses all the time. Like, that's whenever I found out, like, what envy was, right? I didn't want to do it, though. I just needed to know for myself that I was good. So after I learned how to ride horses, I'd get on my horse. His name was King, and on the weekends, man, I'd just escape. I learned how to live in the woods. I'd pack my sleeping bag and throw a couple canned goods in there and my fire starter and just take off, man. When I say I've been all over western Lincoln County on my horse, I mean it. I used to be able to walk the woods with my eyes closed. That was my saving grace. That's what kept my sanity, because a lot of rough things happened, you know. It's what made all the flashbacks and all the insane memories and stuff that were going on up here stop. Just getting on that horse and just taking off, man. I grew up with an older brother who was 2 years older than me. But he had his own things going on, you know. I think he's one of us. He can only identify for that, but he started off at a pretty young age too. So needless to say, living with my mom, my grandparents lived right beside of me. Stepdad was still there. They got in this giant fight. I watched my grandpa shoot my stepdad, and he shot him right in the stomach, and it was just like this big ordeal. And I was like 5 when that happened. That was like, other than sexual abuse, that was like my first memory as a small child. Like, it was always insane stuff happening all the time. Mama having people run in and out of the house, him having people run in and out of the house. And they were meth users. So, like, you know, like, most of us are addicts in here. So the insanity of the shit that went down was just absolutely absurd. My grandparents tried really hard to, like, get custody of me and my brother, but they never really pushed the issue because they didn't want something worse to happen to us. And we were right there anyways. Like, when things got really bad, we would just bounce from mom's house to their house. I was 11 years, so when the abuse got really bad, my mom would take me to these drug houses, and these people would shoot me up with drugs and kind of do whatever they wanted to do to me, and that happened for years. So when people ask me when I first started using, I don't know what to tell you. I first started using because I didn't get that option as a person, right? I didn't get that choice. I didn't get to decide that, hey, I'm going to do this, right, and this is the outcome. When I was 11 years old, and there was this guy named Super Dave who'd come around every so often, and I was getting sexually abused in the bedroom, and this man walks in and I could hear him, and I'm like out of it, and I just felt it. I felt his presence, and I could vaguely hear his voice, and I remember just like screaming out to God. I was like, please, just somebody save me, you know, like somebody save me. And he busted up in that room, and I'm covered in blood, completely covered in blood. And he picks me up, and he wraps me up in a sheet, and he takes me and drops me off at my grandpa's doorstep. My grandmother wasn't home. Like I said, my mom's an active drug user. All the abuse had started with my stepdad. And that man saved my fucking life that day. By the time I got to the hospital, they told me that I was minutes away from dying because of how much blood I had lost. And I had to have reconstructive surgery at the age of 11 years old because the abuse was that bad. My family tried to do what they could do, but they didn't know what they were supposed to do. One, my grandfather didn't know exactly what was going on. I got to the point at the age where, like, I kind of put myself in those situations too. Like, I would call and beg for my mom to come and pick me up just because I wanted to see her that bad that I was willing to accept those consequences because I already knew what those were. And I always got told that if I ever told, I wouldn't be alive. That's what they would tell me. So, I learned just to keep my mouth shut. I remember a couple weeks after that, and I was starting to heal up, and I was like, able to live a semi-normal life. It was just, I was staying with my grandfather at that time. Like I said, my grandmother was out traveling. That's what she did for work. And he drank a lot. And I opened up the fridge, and they had to detox me off all the meds, or all the drugs that had been put into my system. 2, they had given me pain medication that they weren't giving me anymore. And 3, the insanity and the stuff that was going on inside of this brain that I didn't know how to cope with, and I didn't understand what was going on. It had to stop. It had to stop. And I opened up the fridge, and I grabbed a beer out, and there I went. I didn't ever stop. I didn't want to stop. From there, it went on to the bigger and harder things. I remember that first sip of alcohol that I had, I was like, this works, but it's not as good as what they put in my body. And I made it my mission to find that. And when I found it, it was game over, son. It was game over. By the time I was 15, I had already been in and out of mental institutions, been locked up on the 7th floor too many times to count, in and out of detox because my family didn't know what else they were supposed to do with me, because I'd wake up every morning shaking and throwing up and violently dope sick, and it was just insane. Thankfully, I had made it all the way through high school. I don't know how. I really don't know. I managed to graduate. By the time I was 14 years old, I was already homeless and bouncing from couch to couch, living with whatever quote-unquote friend I had at the time, just to use them so that way I'd have somewhere safe to sleep that night, Put myself in a lot of crappy situations due to my drug use, Like, I became a master manipulator. You had something I wanted, I'm going to get it whichever way I know how. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter if I beat you, if I rob you, if I have sex with you. None of that mattered. Whatever you have and I wanted, I was going to go and get. I've always had like this really big F you attitude for the most part. Like, it's gotten a lot better in recovery, but a lot better. And it just I just learned to use it, We're not going to get into all the horror stories and stuff of me actively using. Just know that it was really freaking bad, man. It was really bad. I ended up homeless, living up on the streets. Had a son who was born in neonatal abstinence syndrome because I couldn't quit getting high long enough to be pregnant. I destroyed my whole life, not once, not twice, but multiple times. It's like I would have these short periods of time where I would try to get my stuff together, and I just couldn't do it, man. I wasn't ready. For this person in recovery, it took a lot more than just stop using the drugs, stop using the alcohol. I really needed some mental help. And my family had tried that for a long time, and I just was never really willing to accept it. It was February of 2019, and I had been out, been missing for about 2 weeks, doing what I was doing. I told my kid's father at the time I had a third shift job that I was working. Really, I was just out getting high. And after about 2 months of that, he realized I wasn't getting a paycheck and what I was really doing, and he was pretty abusive, and that was normal. I was used to that. Like, if you didn't beat me and you didn't cuss me and you didn't yell at me, you didn't love me. That's what I learned in my family, right? That was acceptable. But I remember opening up the door, and it's like 4:30 in the morning, and he's standing there, and he's like, "Where's the shit at?" And I was like, "I don't know what you're talking about." I don't know. And well, he found it, and he looked at me. My son wasn't there. I couldn't figure out what's going on. I just remember there was this eerie feeling, like he wasn't mad. And when an abuser is not mad and they're done, that's when you really gotta be scared, because the consequences are about to be really great, And he looked at me and he gave me the ultimatum. He said, "If you don't finally go and get some help and get this under control," he's like, "you're never going to see your child again." I was like, all right, whatever. He said I needed to go to treatment. He had known that I had been to treatment so many times. He himself had put me in and out of detoxes and tried to get it all figured out, and I just wasn't ever ready. And he threw a bag of stuff at me and wouldn't let me in the house, and I went from my house to the Dope Man's house and sat there for a little bit. Well, I guess that would have been about January, because February is when I went into treatment. And remember, it was the 1st of February, and I was sitting in the Dope Man's house, and I just kind of looked around, and I'm like, what am I doing? What am I doing? You know, like, man, I've given up my whole entire life, right? Like, the one thing that I love more in this entire fucking world, anything, is that kid, man. And I just kept thinking to myself, like, how can I do this to him, right? How am I doing the same thing that my parents done me to him? And it's like reality just set in, and I was like, I gotta try. I at least have to try this time. And I got on the phone, and I found a place to go, and I had no money. I mean, I had nothing. I had absolutely nothing. One bag of clothes that was thrown at me, and that was it. And it was to a place called the Oxford Treatment Center in Etta, Mississippi. They used to be ran by American Addiction Specialist Network. And I was talking to a lady on the phone, and I'm just crying, and I'm so upset. And I said, I just remember telling her, I've got to do something different. And she's like, can you find somebody to buy you a plane ticket? I was like, yeah. I was like, but we should probably, like, call her together, because she's just going to think that I'm trying to get high when you do that, you know? That's what Victoria does. Like, I've ended up all kinds of places in active addiction. Like I said, we're going to skip all that stuff, because I'm not here to glorify it, right? Like, I'm here to tell you how bad it freaking sucks and why I had to make a change. So we called that grandmother. Her name's Nanny. Nanny and my grandfather, they had gotten divorced, and you know, her and I had a really rocky relationship, but she's always had money. She's held it down, you know. And we called her on the freeway, and Nanny was done with me. She had wrote me off to the game. I had already stolen everything from her that wasn't nailed down. I had robbed her blind so many times. You know, she was done with me. And I said, I got to do something different, Nanny. I said, I got this lady on the phone. I said, I need a plane ticket to go to Mississippi. I said, I need to fly into Memphis. And she starts cussing, man. She's like, I ain't paying you on no effing plane. I'm not stupid. And the lady that I was talking to, she like steps up and tells her, like, no, seriously, like, this is what the plan is, blah, 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 blah. So Nanny ships me off down to Mississippi. And that was a wild experience. But that time in treatment, like, I knew I had to do something different. I took advantage of all the resources that they had there, right? All that mental help that I needed, they had it. And I was stubborn. Like, y'all have no idea, man. I was out of detox in less than 24 hours from raising hell that last time. I was like, I mean, I just was like a force to be reckoned with. Like, you do not stand in my way. I will tear you down, and I promise you I will go where I want to go. That's just, I'm a very strong-headed and strong-willed person. And they stuck me with this, my main therapist, his name was Hank. He's shorter than Anthony is. Okay? He's just a little guy, you know, and there's nothing wrong with that. There's nothing wrong with that. But I just thought to myself, out of all the people in this treatment facility, you're going to put me with the most zen mother ever we could ever find, right? He had long blonde hair, and he always wore these weird glasses. And he would just let me rant and rave and just go on about my business, and he was just so chill. He was. Now I see why they did that, because they needed me to come down. I was so keyed up, man. They were like, she's going to kill everybody in here. And I'm going to go after the whole corporation, but it ain't going to be you. I will get this place shut down. I kept telling them that, too. You know, like, my real grandmother worked in mental health my entire life. And I'm not a dumb person. I know my laws. Like, you think that if I don't have my smartphone, I can't point out 17 things that you're violating state code against? You best believe I will. You know, and we do that. So long story short, Hank gave me this assignment. He told me that I needed to list out the 5 worst characteristic traits that I could ever find about my mother, and the 5 worst characteristic traits that I could find out about myself. And in that moment, I realized I was the same piece of shit person that my mother was. That same piece of shit that I hated and resented from my teenage years on up. And he also told me I wasn't angry at the world. And I didn't understand that because for Victoria, anger was always the first emotion to ever show up. I'm going to fight you tooth and nail. I'm not going to let you know that you hurt my feelings. I will not cry in front of you. I will just destroy your life. That's the vindictive type of person that I was in active addiction. And he told me, he said, you're not angry. He said, you just need somebody who's going to listen. And he looked at me, he said, I don't know what you've been through. He said, I don't even want to know. He said, but I just know it's not good. So then they stuck me with some other therapists. And they kept me at that place for 90 days. It's a 30-day treatment facility, and they kept me there for 90 days to do intensive work. I did a lot of therapy. A lot. And they taught me a lot of things and a lot of tricks that I still use to this day. And for the first time, I remember in about the first 45 days, all those wild nightmares that I had had my entire life, all the shakes and all the trembles and all the times that I would be so paranoid and so freaked out that I couldn't even process the thought, they got all that to stop, right? And I used the drugs and the alcohol to make all that stop. They told me I didn't have to run no more. Because for me, when I go out and use or if I'm drinking, that's all I'm doing is I'm just running from whatever problem I had created in life. And I went on from there to another sober living house, and it was like an inpatient IOP with housing, and I just did some more work, man. They showed me what AA meetings were. They kept telling me I had to get this freaking sponsor, that I needed to do service work, I needed to find the home group, blah, 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 whatever. And I didn't want to do any of that. I did not do any of those things, right? But I sat inside the rooms and I listened to what they were talking about. I had no idea what the 12 steps meant. None. Was too prideful to ask what they meant. Didn't care. All I knew is that these people had figured out how to quit drinking and how to quit using, and maybe they might know what they're talking about. So I left early from that treatment facility, and I went home. And I came back in like the middle of May. Because my best friend's birthday was June 1st. And I had this best friend, and her and I used to get in a lot of trouble together. And I had only been home for about 48 hours. And I went to go see her. Made it 48 hours by the time I got out of treatment that last time before I picked up again. And I justified that with, well, at least I'm not shooting up and I'm not doing the hard things, right? And at that point, that's whenever I realized that alcohol was a problem for me too. I can't just have one. Can't just have one drink. I can't just do any one thing. I have to have multiples of things. Like I just can't do it once and be done. And from May until November, or end of May to November 30th, I drank myself into a complete oblivion. That was my goal. I was disgusted at the fact that I went and taken all this time and done all this work, and what did I do? I come back home and did the exact same thing that I was doing. I had pretty much everybody fooled. At this point, I had lost all custody. When I went into treatment, I had already lost full custody of Elliot. Didn't know where he was, what was going on with it. Came back, went to a couple custody cases, and somehow by the grace of God, like literally, I remember they would send me in for hair follicle tests, and I'd come home stressing out, like, there ain't no way I'm going to pass this. Like, I'd go, and I just would tell my mom, I'd tell my family, like, y'all ain't going to pass it. I ain't going to be able to do it. And somehow, I managed to pass all those. That wasn't me, right? Because I knew the substances that I had been putting in my body. You know, it wasn't the hard stuff, but there were still extracurriculars in there. It wasn't too bad. The hard stuff on an occasion, but it wasn't like it was an everyday thing, you know? And just a little too. But I did not freebase cocaine. Really, I never did. I'm being serious. I never did that. That kind of scared me. But okay. Sorry, let me get shit together. That was good. I did a good job. There's a meme about that if y'all don't know what we're talking about. Go find it. Get on TikTok, get on Facebook. So I had worked myself up to supervised to unsupervised visitation. And it's November the 29th of 2019. It is the Friday after Thanksgiving. It's Black Friday. Me and my older brother, we loved to drink together. And he's a big boy. And I have yet to this day, no matter how many people I've drank with, I have never seen any mother effer consume as much alcohol as he does. He is insane, man. And I come from a long line of drunks. Like, this, don't take this the wrong way, right? But I grew up in a really, like, redneck area. And for the longest time, like, I kid you not, I thought that when they said redneck, I thought it meant because you were red, right? That's how my family was. They weren't red because they were redneck. They were red because of how much alcohol they had consumed, man. I didn't know that until I got to being an adult, you know? Like, when I say my family, from the time they got up to the time they went to bed, it was a constant rotation of some type of hard liquor to a beer. That's how it was. So when I say that my brother can outdrink all of those, like, that's impressive. Well, me being the good alcoholic that I thought I was, I'm keeping up with him. Tit for tat, man. That's how me and him always did it. And there were some other things that were involved, man. And it was my first unsupervised visitation with my son, and I was so excited, man. We went to my grandma's, and we had a great Thanksgiving dinner. And on the way home, I was coming down this road called Old Shelby Road, and had my son in the back seat of the car, and it didn't work out too good. I ended up flipping the car and going off the side of a bridge and landing upside down in a river with my son in the back seat. And I was too intoxicated to get him out. And all I could hear was him screaming, water going down his fucking throat. About to kill him. About to literally kill him. And I could not get to him because I was too intoxicated to get to him. And that voice, that sound still lives in my head. I mean, it was screeches that were like sounding like a fucking demon coming out of him as he's freaking out, you know? And thankfully there was somebody who was behind me. And her name was Summer Cook, and I didn't like Summer Cook at all. I thought she was this perfect little goody two-shoes from school, and looked like she had her whole life together, and she got to be on the cheer team, and her family was perfect, and she had all those things that I always wanted, right? And she pulled my son out of the car that night and performed CPR on him until the ambulance could get there. And it took until the ambulance got there for them to get him back resuscitated. Okay? When I say he was blue, he was blue. He was blue. And I remember them just watching, pump and pump and pump, and I'm just sitting there praying, and I'm like, God, please, like, don't tell me I did it, man. Don't tell me I did this, you know? And I'm down on my knees just like screaming out like, dude, I'm done. I can't do this anymore. I can't do this. And I remember saying, like, I don't care if I kill myself. Like, God, please take me instead of him, you know? Like, dude, like, it sat in, like, the severity of where my addiction had gotten me, you know? He's fucking 3 years old in the backseat of a car that I just crashed due to my own drinking, to my own actions, you know? And when the EMS got there, this big old man, he went, whoo, whoo! And I watched the water come out of Elliot, and I heard him scream, and I was like, oh, thank God he's alive. Oh my God, you know, like, I couldn't believe that. And he was fine. He was absolutely fine. He had no injuries, no nothing. When I say that God was looking over that little boy, I mean that. Because he should have died. He should have died. Even the paramedics said that. They were like, there is no way that this kid should still be alive, you know. And in the midst of all that, after Elliot had come back, and I'm sitting on the bank, that chick Summer comes over to me, and there's like beer cans floating out of the car and stuff, and it just wasn't good. And how this whole wreck happened was because I decided I was going to shoot up, and I nodded out, and I went off the bridge, okay? And I still had blood running down my arm from where I shot up at. She looked at me, and she said, there's a place for people like you, and it's called Alcoholics Anonymous, and I shit you not. If God had ever spoken to me in my entire life, that was the moment that God spoke to me. And I thought to myself, I was like, maybe that's where I need to go. She might be right. She had also told me that that's where her dad went. That's how he got better. So this whole time I had a resentment over this chick whose family was just as screwed up as mine was, come to find out. You know, she didn't have that perfect life that I thought that she did. And so needless to say, they made me do a field sobriety test, took me down to the jailhouse, and I was talking to the state trooper. One of the officers that was there, he had already arrested me several other times, and his daughter was the same age as me, and I mean, it was just, everybody in the county knew, man, that I was just hell on wheels. And they, you know, I told them, I was like, I'm going to get out, I'm going to do what I'm supposed to do this time. I'm really going to go get help, I'm going to do this right. And they believed me. They let me sign myself out. Walked away with 4 felonies and like 5 misdemeanors, okay? Most of my felonies were in child abuse. And then they charged me with a DUI. Left the center, open container. I mean, all these just like a list of things. And they let me, my sister-in-law came and picked me up, and they let me go. But that officer, Officer Holt, looked at me and he said, I'll be there Monday. He said, and if you don't have a plan, he said, you're going to jail, Victoria. He said, this is it, we're done with you. And I was like, okay. So I had went off. I went to Richmond, Virginia, and went into a recovery house there, and I started to listen. All right, because I wanted it. There was a difference. That was the defining moment between when I had to do it and when I wanted to do it. And when I wanted to do it, I did as everybody told me to do. They told me to get up out of that bed and go find a job. I got up out of that bed and went and found a job. She told me I had to go to meetings. I went to meetings. She told me I had to find a sponsor. I found a sponsor. She told me, okay, well, now that you got a sponsor, you got to work the steps. I worked the steps. She told me I needed to make sure that my room was clean and my bed was made. I made sure my room was clean and my bed was made. Whatever my chore was, that was the first thing I did in the morning as I'm drinking a cup of coffee. When I say I wanted it, I wanted it. You would have told me that I had to go and jump off a bridge and do 6 backflips in order to stay sober. I would have jumped off that bridge and done 6 backflips. Like, I'm being serious. That's how bad I had wanted it, man. I had spent my whole life in active addiction and just running rampant. My entire life, like I was done. And I got involved with an awesome sponsor who took me through the steps for the first time, and I got involved with all these great women who were responsee sisters, and I learned about meetings, and I learned that it was okay to be vulnerable with people. That was a big thing for me. I learned it was okay for everybody to see Victoria for who she really was, right? That scared, insecure little girl who was terrified of the entire world. I learned that inside of the rooms of AA that it was okay to be that person. I learned it was okay to let people love me for once in my life and genuinely love me, not because of what I have to offer them, but just because of the person that I am. I learned how to be okay with me. I really got to stop running, you know. I got to look at all the wrong things that I had done in life and be able to make all those things right to the best of my ability. She taught me about what surrender was, and she taught me about forgiveness, and she taught me about acceptance, and she taught me how to not beat myself up anymore. Because that is the hardest thing. For this alcoholic, it is the hardest thing not to do, is not to beat myself up. Not to reminisce on old things that I've done. After I got charged with that DUI and the bad wreck with Elliot, once again, all of my rights as a parent was taken at that point in time. They were done with me. Done with me. I went in front of that judge, and he looked at me the first time, and he said, Victoria, he said, you'll never see him again. And I accepted that. I truly accepted that. So everything's on a temporary basis, so you have to go back every so often. I had to go back in 90 days. I had court the Monday before I left and went off to Richmond, Virginia. They had put me on the emergency docket and got me in front of a judge because of what I had done that weekend. And I got letters in the mail stating I needed to be at court again. And at this point in time, I had about 4, almost 5 months in recovery. I didn't have any money, right? I'm having to pay child support that I was ordered, having to pay to live in this recovery house. I'm working my ass off. I'm going to meetings. I'm doing step work. I'm doing all these things. And I was talking to my sponsor about it. I said, I don't know how I'm supposed to get down North Carolina. I don't have a car anymore, right? Like the car that I was driving when I was in a wreck came from this dude that I had used to buy me a car. Like, I mean, I was very manipulative. Like, I didn't have anything, you know, guys. And she told me about a sponsee sister who would probably take me. Little did I know my sponsor at that time was going around and collecting up donations for me to be able to have a hotel room so I didn't have to go back to the same family that I walked out of. She taught me how to dress. I didn't know how to dress. I still don't have the time, right? I don't. I put on a dress because I have to for work, but I just don't. But they did all these things for me, and I didn't understand that. I didn't get it. Like, because they knew how horrible of a person I was, and you still want to do for me? It just never made sense. And came down here and I showed the judge that I'd been going to meetings and I'd been doing X, Y, and Z, and he looked at me and said, I give you one more chance. He said, when you come back down to North Carolina, he said, I'm gonna do a step-up plan with you. And I didn't know what that meant, and I just said, okay. And I got in front of that judge and I told him, I said, I am not a fit mother and you should probably keep him as far away from me as you possibly can. And he gave me another chance. And I came back down to North Carolina, and that's whenever I started coming to meetings in the Gastonia. And once again, I didn't have a car, I didn't have nothing, except for the desire and the willingness to do something different. I walked every freaking where, man. I walked. John Robinson knows about that. Me and him would meet up in meetings and stuff in the middle of the day. Like, I put my trucks on and I walked to meetings. I walked to my visitations with my son, and when I say I did it, I did it. I mean, there was times where I could walk 10, 12 miles a day, man. I had no problems with that. I woke up every day that I was grateful that I had 2 legs because God had given me a friend that only had 1.5 legs, and he still walked every day. I'm being serious. That stuff is in my journal. Like, really, I'm so thankful today, God, that I have 2 legs, because John only has 1.5. And if he can walk, I can walk. Like, that's really how it was. Like, I'm being serious. And I just kept doing it, and kept doing it, and kept doing it. Somebody would tell me to do something, man, and I would do it within reason for those first about 2 years. And I had gotten to the point where I ended up getting joint custody of my son, you know. That is still the greatest blessing that I have gotten in recovery, besides finding self-acceptance for me as a woman and for me as a human being, right? I don't have to be disgusted anymore at the shameful things that I did in active addiction. I don't have to be mad at myself for all the crappy situations that I put myself into or all the things that I've done. But that little boy, that little redheaded 8-year-old kid who drives me absolutely mad and pings off the walls, having him back in my life is the greatest thing that I have ever gotten. And I do not take that for granted any day. Absolutely no days at all. God's given me a great job. Like, my big girl job, as I called it. I still have a big girl job. I don't know how, but I had applied to work in a bank, and I didn't ever think I would get that. Like, who would if you knew me, you would not let me in a bank, especially with a set of keys and my own combos to get into the money. You would not do that. And God gave me that, right? But what was really wild that day, whenever I went in for my first day at Truist on the west side of Gastonia, because that's how bad it was, that's where God decided to put me, which is okay, because they needed my help, right? God knew what he was doing. I can't tell you how many people I pulled off the streets there and sent them to detox. How many people I showed that there was a different way of life, because I stayed on that same fucking corner that God put me back out at in active addiction. I was on that same corner, man, doing the same thing that everybody else was. And God put me right back there when I got sober. And those things don't happen unless you have a higher power and you're able to see that type of higher power work in your life. So I got my first big girl job at a bank, and then I went on to another bank and got an even better big girl job, and all the materialistic things have come, you know, the house and stuff like that. And then in the last year, like, I have learned what it's like to be an independent woman. You know what I mean? Like, I went through some gnarly things in recovery. A lot of things that, like, I was resentful at God for. Like, but it never made me want to use. It never made me want to drink. It never made me want to do anything other than just to be better. Mm-hmm. And now I look at God when things happen in life, and I'm like, what is this lesson you're trying to teach me? Mm-hmm. right? Like, I know I'm going through a phase, I'm going through a strong or a rough point in life, but like, what are you going to teach me at the end of this? Like, if I just stay vigilant in all the things that I do on a day-to-day basis, like, God is going to teach me something amazing. And for the first time in my entire life, I can say, and as a woman who has been codependent on men her entire life, for me to say that I pay my own bills and I live in my own house and I do all the things that I want to do on my own makes me feel really good. Really freaking good. I do that, right? I don't have to I do that. I don't have to depend on anybody for anything. Like, I get to do that, and that's a good feeling. And not only for me, but for my child as well. I have learned so much about how to be a decent human being, right? I have to stay humble all the time. My ego cannot get big. I am nobody. I am nothing. At the end of the day, I'm just this little bitty pissant that's in this world, and I'm just trying to make it a little bit of a better place each day. And I'm making sure that no matter where I am or what's going on, when somebody reaches out for help, I am always there to help. No matter what the situation is, I will always be there. And AA is the greatest thing that I've received out of AA as a group as a whole is the sense of family and community that I had always searched for as a little girl. And for me, that is what has helped me the most. To know that no matter what is going on in life, there's always somebody inside of the rooms who has either been through the exact same thing or who I could trust enough to go and get advice from, right? So now whenever I look at myself in 5 years from recovery, I've gotten my son back, have my own house, I have all the materialistic things, and the latest adventure that I went on is I've decided that I was worthy enough to go to school. And I decided what I wanted to be when I become a big kid. And I'm not a big kid yet because I got lots of school left, but I will be one day, you know? And that feels good too. To know that I have the freedom of choice. Like, I don't have anything or anybody holding me back from whatever I want to do in life today. And that is a good feeling. That is amazing. To know that, like, if I just do what I'm supposed to do, and if I keep God in the center of everything that I do, I can go out in this world and do whatever I want to do. Whatever I choose to do. And if I'm doing and operating in God's will, He's going to open those doors up for me because He's shown me that time and time again. Like, my absolutely absurd dream right now is to be a family defense attorney because I see a need for it. Somebody who's in recovery needs to be able to stand up for other parents in recovery and be like, hey, this is what we're going to do. You know, like, if you do X, Y, and Z here, I'll help you get there. Like, all I gotta do is just do what God kind of tells me to do and put the footwork in. And sure enough, like, I know it may take me 15 years, but one day I'll get to stand up and have my own trial and be able to help some woman like my lawyer did for me. That's the end goal, you know, and to make sure that people in recovery don't have to feel hopeless and helpless anymore, because we don't. Like, we get our own choices. And I got one thing to read, and I know I'm probably past time. But nobody ever reads these, and they're called the 10th Step Promises, and it comes from chapter 6, pages 84 and 85 out of the big book. And we have ceased fighting anything or anyone, even alcohol, for by this time sanity will have returned. We will seldom be interested in liquor. If tempted, we recoil from it like a hot flame. We react sanely and normal, and we will find that this has happened automatically. We will see that our new attitude toward liquor has been given us without any thought or effort on our part. It just comes. That is the miracle of it. We are not fighting it, neither are we avoiding temptation. We feel as though we have been placed in a position of neutrality, safe and protected. We have not even sworn off. Instead, the problem has been removed. It does not exist for us. We are neither cocky nor are we afraid. This is our experience. This is how we must react as long as we keep fit in a spiritual condition. And for me, at this point in my sobriety, it's all about emotional sobriety, right? I don't have a desire to go out and get drunk. I don't have a desire to go out and use. I just need to know how to maintain being sane in a world filled full of crazy people. And the only possible way to do that is to take the principles that come from these 12 steps and apply that every day in my daily life. And I fall short a lot of the time. A lot. And I still have some pretty serious anger issues where Victoria can just like lose it and just kind of like go out in left field. And but these 12 steps have taught me how to bring it back down, right? And to keep all those things in line so that way I can be the person that God wants me to be. Because at the end of the day, I don't know what that picture looks like. I just know I'm out here trying to do His work. Whether that be through speaking at meetings, working with sponsees, or my favorite, which is going inside of jails, prisons, and institutions. And if you're at a stagnant point in your recovery, I recommend that you find some service work for you to do. Because there's people out there who need to hear what we have to say and need to know that there's a way out. So thanks for letting me share my story.
Thank you again, Victoria. That was an incredible story.
Who created the stars and keeps us out of bars?
Hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come. Thy will be done on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our trespasses, as we forgive those who trespass against us. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. For thine is the kingdom, the power, and the glory, forever and ever. Amen.